Welcome to the channel. I'm the Scottish astrologer, and in this video I want to share with you all what I have discovered concerning predicting grand solar minimums using the conjunction and opposition cycles of Saturn and Jupiter. Now, thanks to living in the year 2020 and also knowing that this is the starting point of the current grand solar minimum cycle, as well as also knowing that the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter also lands this year. This allowed me to look back in history and see if I could find a correlation or a pattern, if you like, that would show a link between grand solar minimums and the conjunction cycles of Saturn and Jupiter. Now, as the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction cycle occurs every 19.85 years, so very close to 20, but it's actually 19.85 is the average. So, obviously this shows that every Saturn-Jupiter conjunction cycle obviously does not coincide with a grand solar minimum. But what I am trying to find is if there is a repeating pattern of every 10 or 20 great conjunction cycles, for example, that lines up with the approximated grand solar minimum years throughout history. And what I have found does indeed show an accurate repeating pattern of these great conjunction cycles lining up with grand solar minimums every time. And now the magic number, if you like, of great conjunction cycles to a grand solar minimum is 19. So 19 times 19.85 gives you 377.15 years. And half of this cycle, if you half this number, half this cycle, that gives us 188.575 years. And this also flips the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction cycle into a Saturn-Jupiter opposition cycle, where instead of them being together in the heavens, they are now directly opposite each other, 180 degrees apart, half in the zodiac. Now, both these cycles which I just mentioned, being the great conjunction cycle as being 377.15 years, 19 great conjunction cycles, and obviously half in this number, 188.575, flips you onto the opposition cycle. But 19 great opposition cycles obviously runs 377.15 years also. But these two counter cycles run right in the middle of each other, 188.575 years apart, okay? So I hope you all understood that. I hope that was clear enough. And again, both of these cycles, again running 188.5 years in between each other, both of these cycles line up with the approximated grand solar minimum starting dates, like clockwork, as I will show you. And in my opinion, as this is a precise repeating cycle and not just guesswork approximations, I believe this cycle actually now shows us the precise grand solar minimum start years. A bold statement, I know, but stick with me and I believe I can convince you otherwise with evidence that anyone can easily check and calculate with no trouble at all. But before I start showing the calculations, let me first show you just why the number 19 is important and key, in my opinion, to showing history repeating or rhyming. First is obviously the conjunction cycle of Saturn and Jupiter being 19.85 years, so 19. And secondly, there is another very important cycle that takes 19 years, which is the Metonic cycle, where every 19 years the phase the moon was in on a particular day of the year will only repeat again exactly 19 years later. So for example, this year we've seen a full moon take place on Halloween, 31st of October. Now, the last time there was a full moon on that date was back in 2001. And so the sun and moon take 19 years to repeat their pattern with one another on the same day, and thus history repeats itself in the heavens and rhymes here on earth due to this 19-year number cycle. So this is the reason I instinctively went with the number 19 to try and find a repeat cycle or number of cycles in the heavens linked to grand solar minimums, which affect us down here below on Earth. And so starting in the year 2020, okay, if you're doing this on a calculator, you want to put a 0.15 at the end of 2020 just to harmonize these numbers, so that when you're working back, taking the 377.15 away from the year 2020, it harmonizes with the the Great Conjunction years back in history. So again, if you were going to do this on a calculator, 2020, but 0.15 at the end. And now take away 377.15 years away from 2020, which takes us back to the year 1643, which just happens to line up with the estimated starting year of the Maunder minimum, which is said to be approximately the year 1645. So this cycle matches up near perfectly, just 2 years off, which, as again 1645 is just an approximation. And as this cycle, like all the other repeats back in time, like I'll show you, land at grand solar minimums, I truly believe the actual year was 1643, like this cycle I'm showing you suggests. As we now know, 2020 is the year of a Great Conjunction and is the start of this current new grand solar minimum. And we can therefore use this cycle with 2020 as a precise starting point to work back from, as I am showing. And now, before I get into showing you what the Great Opposition half cycle pattern runs like, relating to the Dalton minimum and the Sporer minimum and the Oort minimum, which run in between the Great Conjunction cycle pattern of minimums. Now, these minimums being the current modern eddy minimum that's just started, the Maunder minimum, which we've just went back to, and the Wolf minimum. Now, let me return back to the year 1643. Let me continue the cycle. So, again, take away 377.15 years away from 1643, which takes us back to the Great Conjunction year of 1265, which again is very close to the estimated start year of the Wolf minimum, which is said to be 1280. So it's only 15 years out, and it should be expected that the further we go back in time, the more off point the experts' estimations of the grand solar minimum starting years will be. But again, 15 years is very close. And again, I trust this cycle, and so truly believe the true start year for the Wolf minimum was actually 15 years earlier than approximated, making the true start year, again in my opinion, 1265. And it's fine if you disagree with me. That's no problem. I'm just trusting this cycle which I have discovered, and I'm sharing information with you. But again, this information leads me to truly personally believe that this is the key cycle which shows us the accurate starting points of every grand solar minimum. Okay, moving us on again, take away another 377.15 years from 1265, and now that takes us back to the Great Conjunction year of 888 AD, and once again it roughly lines up with the grand solar minimum just before the medieval warm period, or maximum. Now, this grand solar minimum is said to have begun around the year 900 AD, so again, a mere 12 years off official estimations. And so once again, I truly believe that the true start dates of these minimums are shown by this cycle, making the true start year not 900 AD, but actually the year 888, which again is very close. Now let me show you what happens when you halve this great conjunction cycle, making it again a great opposition cycle instead. Now, giving us again 188.575. So starting in the year 2020.15, take that number away from 2020.15 again, and that takes us back to the year 1831. Now, this lines up with the estimated end date of the Dalton minimum, which is estimated to end in either 1820 or 1830. I'll say 1830 based on this cycle being the correct closer estimation. Now, this great opposition cycle runs slightly different from the great conjunction cycle, the great conjunction cycle pattern. And it works like this. It ends a minimum, starts the previous minimum, and ends the minimum before that, as you will see. So now that we are on a great opposition cycle year, you can go back 377.15 from 1831, which takes us back to the year 1454, just 4 years off the approximated start year of the Sporer minimum, which is said to start 1450 or 1460. Now going back another 377.15 years from 1450, that takes us back to the year 1077. Again, just 3 years away from the estimated end of the Oort minimum, which is said to have ended in 1080. So as I just showed, this cycle runs from the end of the Oort minimum to the beginning of the Sporer, and from the beginning of the Sporer to the end of the Dalton. So these two cycles of 377.15 years that run perfectly in the middle, in between each other, are clearly the key to predicting grand solar minimum cycles. There is a clear lineup every time, undoubtedly. Now, I believe that this particular grand solar minimum we have currently just entered is going to be even worse, I'm sorry to say, than the Maunder minimum, due to us entering at the same time the age of Aquarius now, which is nearing the mid-great winter season of what's known as the Great Year. And the Great Year is basically a full precession of the equinoxes which takes roughly 26,000 years, and that's a whole different cycle in itself that affects climate other than grand solar minimums. Now, I will go over this topic in detail in my next video, but again, back to my point, this grand solar minimum, which started this year 2020, and I say it will be worse, or at least as bad as the Maunder minimum, and we will know if that's true roughly 19.85 years from now, okay? So roughly 2040, 2039, we will know for sure if this cycle is going to be as bad or worse as the Maunder or not as bad as the Maunder. So at the very next great conjunction after this one, and I say we will know for sure come 20 years roughly from now at the next great conjunction, because if you go back to the beginning of the Dalton minimum, which I've showed we are on a repeating cycle, okay, you go back to that year, 1643, then you go 20 years ahead, okay, from 1643, taking you to the great conjunction year of 1663, and as you can read on screen, okay, by that year, we had in the summer, okay, August 21st, the English Parliament held an intercessory fast due to the concern about the wintry weather. Okay, remember, we're August 21st here. They're concerned about the wintry weather. We're in summer. And 1 week later, on August the 28th, 1663, a severe frost hits England. Again, this is in the summer. Okay, so what does that mean for England? It means all agriculture dead. People starved. It was dreadful. And I am saying by 2040, we should see the same effects as back then. Winter in the summer. I believe we will see this in 2040. And if by some absolute miracle we don't, then it's safe to say this grand solar minimum is a much weaker one. But with this knowledge, it would be extremely wise to prepare for this massive potentiality, especially since it was the full 377.15 year cycle from now that landed on the deep Maunder minimum, and the half cycle took us back to a much weaker Dalton. So since the last minimum was weak, I expect this one to naturally be much stronger, again, especially at the point of the great year we are in the age of Aquarius. So I'll talk about that next video, but it's all related. Again, if we do not see wintry conditions in the summer in roughly 20 years time or before, then this minimum will not be as bad as the Maunder, and I will be completely proven wrong. Only time will tell. I hope I am proven wrong. But I know in my bones I'm not wrong, especially with the moves governments are clearly making around the world. Right now, if you think we're going into this sort of period where the weather's going to completely change and it's going to wipe out agriculture, you can understand what's going on in the world right now. But they're not telling you the truth of the matter. It's obvious. Now, of course, we currently have modern technology to help us through these times, but it's going to be a different ballgame with something like a massive CME, coronal mass ejection, which is extremely likely, okay, highly likely at some point in a deep grand solar minimum again, like I truly believe this one is. So we really need to learn proper survival skills that will help in these times, worst case scenario. But again, coinciding with all this is humanity's upgrading consciousness, if you like, as we come into the age of Aquarius, December 21st this year. Everyone won't get an instant, complete upgrade in consciousness come December 21st this year, but it's a process. It's going to truly become a mass of humanity that truly does awake. Starting that point, it's going to fully speed up, take off, and reach a critical mass of humanity before you know it. Which is a beautiful thing, and of course a truly needed thing, especially when we're coming into times like these, times where humanity truly needs to work together, not against one another. We truly need to be united, not divided. Okay folks, I think I've went on enough for this video. A huge thanks for watching. Please like and please do share. If I've ever pleaded with you to share a video more, wanted you to share a video more, it's this one. So please share. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and also don't forget to hit the bell at the right hand side of the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.